time. This is like 3 days in a row, so I'm a little frustrated with myself. Anyway, welcome committee. We talked yesterday about two bills we were going to work, and do I? Yeah, we can close the door. That's fine. Is that an official motion? Do I have a second? All right, door is shut. Good work, committee. So I know Scotty Hill is coming. Oh, all rise. Just kidding. Right over there. Right over there. First, I did want to acknowledge, sorry for the delay, I was trying to acknowledge our guests today, but not all of them were here on time. I want to thank Representative Droege and Majority Leader Croft for filling in for us today. Appreciate you guys helping us out today. Scotty, Representative Hill will be here in about 10 minutes, but we're going to go ahead and jump into working House Bill 2494 to kind of remind everybody what we did there. This was the bill regarding AEDs in schools and all of that. You guys got a proposed copy of the amendment in your email last night. Hopefully you had a chance to review that. So essentially, there's a little bit of a story there. A lot of work went into this, and there's plenty of people in this room that I would like to thank, because we brought everybody in, everybody had a seat at the table, we worked out our differences on the bill, we crafted an amendment. Jason worked tirelessly to get it to us, and he is much appreciated as well. But I just want to thank everybody that was involved in this, from the American Heart Association, KASB, the NEA, Jim Carlskin even had a hand in this, so you know it's got to be good. So with that, I would like to go ahead and start the discussion on House Bill 2494 and offer this amendment, which I would like our amazing reviser Jason to kind of give you a rundown of what we've done here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Since we have some guest members today, did anybody not receive a copy of the proposed substitute prior to today's meeting? Yeah, okay. Do you need a copy? Yes. Yes, the proposed substitute, Mr. Chairman, that's presented before the committee would be a substitute bill for House Bill 2494. It just focuses on the cardiac emergency response plans, that portion of the original 2494. So there is nothing in the proposed substitute in dealing with school safety and security or that grant program or any of the standards around those types of policies. The bill does shift the statewide standards responsibility to the Secretary of Health and Environment. If you recall, under the underlying bill, it was going to be the State Board of Education. The proposed substitute would have the Secretary of Health and Environment develop statewide standards for these plans. Those would be developed in accordance with nationally recognized guidelines for implementation of cardiac emergency response plans. Each Board of Education of a school district is then directed to adopt a comprehensive plan, including policies and procedures for responses at each attendance center that's operated by the district based on those statewide standards. The bill goes into a list of the different parts that are supposed to be part of that cardiac emergency response plan. These are all very similar to what was under the underlying bill in terms of what has to be included in the plan, establishing a team, identifying roles and responsibilities, not only of school district personnel, but also local law enforcement and local emergency medical services providers, and implementing the plan, designating individuals to receive training on CPR and AED administration, conducting routine maintenance of the AEDs, designating their placement and the various buildings operated by the school district, rehearsing the plan, communication systems with local EMS providers operating in the district, developing emergency action plans for school-sponsored events that are located not on district property, so you have a plan in place for that. There's an annual review of these, and copies are to be provided to the Secretary of Health and Environment upon adoption. The bill also has provisions similar to the underlying bill regarding who is supposed to get a copy of those plans, reviewing those plans with school district personnel at the beginning of the school year, reviewing the plans at the end of each school year with administration and with appropriate local law enforcement and EMS personnel. There are provisions to maintain the automated external defibrillators, AEDs, in public readily accessible locations with appropriate signage indicating where those are. There are still the provisions to conduct training for coaches and sponsors of school-sponsored activities and other designated personnel at the beginning of each athletic season or at the beginning of the school year, and to have a trained individual at each school-sponsored activity. There's a new provision at the top of page 4, a Good Samaritan related provision to relieve any individual who's in good faith rendering emergency care from being liable for any damages. And there's a reference to our Good Samaritan liability protection statute there. There's also an additional provision, section 3 on page 4, that says the school board of each board of education of a school district shall implement their plan when there is sufficient unencumbered funds available to implement such plan. And so if the district does not have sufficient funds upon adoption of the plan to place all of the AEDs in the locations as required under their plan, then they can implement the plan in phases, so to speak, as funding is available to implement the different portions of their emergency response plan. And tying in with that, there is still the provision, section 4 of the bill establishes a grant program to be administered by the Department of Health and Environment to provide grants to school districts to help with financial assistance in implementing their plans. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
All right, questions, committee. All right, Representative Getz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe just remind me how much money is being made available for this? Because you said if money is not there, then they'll be able to access it. When it does become available, how much money is tied to this?
The grant program would be subject to appropriation.
Okay.
There isn't a specific appropriation to the grant fund in this proposed substitute, and so. I know historically the School Safety and Security Grant Program has had a $5 million annual appropriation for the department to hand out grants from, but that amount has not been specified in this proposed substitute.
Okay, appreciate it.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with this new substitute, is there a change in the FTEs?
My understanding is there might be a change in the fiscal note with KDHE, but I would have to confirm that with them and see if they've released a modified. They probably have not released a modified fiscal note because this isn't become a public document yet. Upon adoption by the committee, if it gets reprinted as substitute for House Bill 2494, then there can be a request to the Division of Budget for a new fiscal note.
And to follow up on that, in the original bill with the original language, there was a whole new division created at KDHE with 11 FTEs. That has since been removed, so, and $2 million, yeah. So those provisions have changed, so there won't be a new division created, there won't be 11 FTEs, as stated in the original bill. Further questions? Representative Younger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I know how critical these are. Years ago, we had them put in each building in Ulysses. At the main entrance, we had one by each gym. I mean, I know how critical this is, but sometimes I get confused. We have a local board of education that directed us to do that. We have a state board of education. And I guess I'm confused on their roles. Why are they not dealing with this, and why is the Kansas legislature dealing with this? I don't know if that's to Jason or the chair, or somebody help me understand that, please.
So we have to establish the grant fund, and we can deal with the appropriations. If we were to do it, or let the state board do it, that would technically be an unfunded mandate, which I know everybody loves, that they would then have to fund with their own money without an appropriation from the state. So by doing this, we're leaving it up to the state board and the local boards to come up with the plan, and we're also saying we're not going to put a timeline on it. We're going to let you implement it as you go, as the money becomes available. But we still, as a legislature, have to do the funding piece of it as far as the appropriation side of things.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Is that why the Secretary of Health and Environment is in this piece then? That funding will go through them?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes, my understanding, Mr. Chairman, is they were approached to administer the grant program and were willing to do so.
Thank you.
And that was part of the discussion as well, is making sure KDHE, we use their guidelines as far as the CERT program itself versus the state board's concern was they would have to come up with the standards of how to operate these things, how to use the AEDs. And so that's why we changed it to make sure KDHE stayed involved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more question. And
Fire away.
I wasn't privy to, this amendment, and you said there were a number of entities involved in it. Can you identify who those groups were?
Kansas Association of School Board, the American Heart Association, USA, the teachers group was there, the NEA was there, Ann Ma from the State Board of Education was in there in the room, somebody from Scott from KSD, Kansas Department of Education was there, and there was also a couple of attorneys present to help us with like the liability language. I think I got everybody.
The State High School Activities Association.
My apologies to Bill Faflick. He was in the room as well. If you see him, tell him I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Riley.
I think that very last comment answered my question because we had an extensive discussion about what would happen on the athletic fields, and I was wondering whether you had anyone from KSHA or athletic trainers or somebody on there that be part of that puzzle too, because they have large amount of incidents that has happened. We've had that discussion, and so we just want to make sure that they were good with this too.
They did. They offered a couple of suggestions as far as verbiage, and we obliged, certainly. And we wanted to make sure they had their say as well, so, because this is a serious issue. But we also, that's why we also changed the language to make sure, A, it wasn't an unfunded mandate, and B, we didn't say you have to do this by this time. We all, pretty much the entire room agreed as funds become available versus just saying, figure it out on your own. So, go ahead.
And my understanding again, that this is going to be a grant. And so is this going to be an ongoing grant for 50 years or what's it going to be?
I don't think we put a sunset on the grant because we didn't put a timeline on when everybody would be required to have these.
The grant program will continue in perpetuity in state law until it is changed by the legislature. The monies for the grants would be an annual appropriation by the legislature.
And that's also based, yeah, and that's also based off the needs. So we've gotten surveys from some districts that tell us, like we have one district, I was told has about 19 academic centers and 34 AEDs, if I remember the number correctly. And so not every district is requiring, or is requiring the funds or the need for them. A lot of them already have them, but we don't have an exact number. That's why we made the language a little bit more appropriate so they could get them as the funds become available. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, but part of this whole substitute is the fact that you are forcing every USD in this state to create policy. And just like everything else, all of a sudden now you put another workload on them as far as what they're going to have to put that together. And I'm sure the Kansas School Board Association will help them with that. But I'm just saying that's a paper load, add to the policy book, all that kind of stuff that you're going to add to all of that.
Well, here's the good news. I believe the department, the KDHE, probably already has a standard policy on AEDs, how to use them in this training. That's already in place. They already have that. So I don't think we're creating anything new here. They already have the standards on how to use these things, so. Representative McNorton.
So with the grant going on for in perpetuity, would that also include as these get old, need replaced, would that be able to use that grant at that time? Is that,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Representative Younger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How does the appropriations side of it work then? Who makes that request for a dollar amount?
That could be made in the Appropriations Committee. We could add it to the K-12 budget, but I believe we can go to the Appropriations Committee and request funds.
Is there a plan for that? I mean, have we thought that far ahead? Do we have a dollar amount
There's
in our heads, or?
We don't right now, only for the simple fact that we don't know how many districts have them and how many don't. So that's why the language is the way it is, because when we say as funds become available, once the districts tell us, hey, we don't need any, or hey, we don't have any, or we need to get more, then we can come up with an appropriate appropriation.
So how do we get that word out to the districts? How?
It's already working. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Representative Riley.
Again, following up on a previous representative's question, so we are looking at who needs these policies, but on the other hand, I think it was previously brought up, and I think that's a good point, that everybody's equipment is going to need to be replaced, whether that is in 2 years or 3 or whatever. So we are going to be literally replacing the whole state of Kansas's equipment eventually, and again, and again, and again.
If they apply for the grants, the schools are already putting these in. A lot of the districts already have them and already have the funds appropriated to replace them. The grant fund allows those that don't have them to use it as well. So a lot of the districts that are already appropriating money and putting these in their schools aren't going to need this grant. This is more focused on making sure we have a statewide policy to make sure these are in place and the training is there, and that's why the grant fund is established. It's not just to, that's what our target is making sure every district has them, and the ones that don't have them have the grant money available. Go ahead.
Yes, respectfully, Mr. Chair, but the easy way out is always to go for the grant.
Sure. And it has to go through an approval process as well, so. Fair point. Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my feeling that if these AEDs are deemed important by the committee now, then they would still be important to the committee and the legislature in perpetuity.
And I believe it's worth noting that AEDs, the lifespan of those is about 10 years, just for the record. So as we're talking about appropriations. Further questions? Yes.
One final note, Mr. Chairman. I did fail to mention that the bill does have a delayed effective date to January 1st of 2025. So it would not become effective. You wouldn't have a development of statewide standards and then the subsequent adoption by the state board until 2025.
Further questions? Seeing Representative Majority Leader.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As far as the appropriations process goes, because this is a named process, and that's, I was just confirming that, it'll already alert the appropriations process. So they'll see this and they'll include that in their budget process as they're going through. So it's an automatic thing that they'll get to see it, and plus he'll bring it up to the chair and talk about it, so.
Further questions? All right, bless you. Seeing none, once again, I want to thank everybody that was at the table to help make this amendment drive, and I think this is how legislation should work. Everybody sits at the table, everybody hashes it out, and we come up with a product that we can be proud of. So with that, Committee, I would like to make the motion to pass this amendment favorably, and I will look for a second. Second from Representative Stogsdill. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Good. Motion passes. The amendment is adopted. Further discussion on the bill? Yeah, Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that HB 2494 be moved as amended for favorable for passage.
Heard the motion. Is there a second? Second from Representative Estes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of passing out House Bill 2494 as amended favorably, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Bill's hereby passed out of committee. Thank you, committee. Good work on that. And then I would like to now begin working House Bill 2597 or 2567, which we heard last week. That is the Emerge bill. Does anybody need a rundown of that bill before we start working? Yeah, Representative Ruiz, thank you. So I will turn to the reviser to give us another rundown of House Bill 2567.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 2567 would create the Kansas National Guard Educational Masters for Enhanced Readiness and Global Excellence, a MERGE program. This program would function very similar to the current undergraduate financial assistance for National Guard members program that is in state law. The significant differences would be that this would be for Guard members who are seeking a master's degree through a master's degree program, and it would also be limited to not more than 200 eligible Guard members in any one school year. Each July 1, the Adjutant General would select up to 100 eligible National Guard members to participate in the program and receive the financial assistance to obtain their master's degree, but with the caveat that the total number for that academic school year would be limited to 200. The remaining provisions, as I said, are all very similar to the undergraduate program. There is a requirement, however, as elevated for this program, that the eligible Guard member sign an agreement to serve for 6 years upon completion of their master's degree program in the Guard. And if they fail to do so, then there would be a repayment required that would be prorated based on the amount of service they had provided versus the 6 years that they are required.
All right, very good. Now, I do believe we have an amendment that has to do with some of the suggestions the Kansas Board of Regents had. There were a few technical little changes they mentioned they'd like to see. So with that, we'll pass that out, and I'll have Jason explain it. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the balloon consists primarily of suggested edits from the Board of Regents. The first you will see on page 1 of the balloon would be to add Washburn University to the definition of a Kansas educational institution to allow National Guard members to attend and receive a master's degree from one of the programs at Washburn University. The next amendment on page 2 in line 4, the State Board testified that they may not need to adopt rules and regulations to administer this act, as it will be largely governed by the National Guard. And so they suggested changing that shall to a may in line 4. In line 36, also on page 2, The Board of Regents suggested changing financial to tuition to more accurately reflect the financial assistance described there. The other addition would be to also include institutional tuition assistance. So then any federal aid or institution-specific aid that's provided to the Guard member would offset the financial assistance being provided under the program. On page 3, you'll see amendments in line 6 and lines 34. This would change the service requirement from 6 years down to only 4 years. And so you see the 48 months there in those two lines. The other amendment on page 3 is in lines 17 through 26. This was the language requiring the Guard member to obtain a certificate of their satisfactory participation in the Guard, present that to the educational institution to receive payment, and then transmitting a transcript back to the Guard. The state board had testified that their communications with their institutions and with the National Guard rendered this requirement unnecessary, that they could exchange the information among the institutions as required. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the amendment? Representative Getz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just get a clarification on why specifically Washburn was the kind of add in there and not other colleges, or why specifically Washburn?
The definition of Kansas educational institution includes all of the public four-year institutions, higher ed institutions in the state except for Washburn University. And so I believe it was inclusion of Washburn because they were an institution that offers a master's degree program that was not included in that definition.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Further questions? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The substitution for tuition assistance, does that mean these funds can only be used for tuition and fees, which I think I saw later, and not living expenses?
Mr. Chairman, yes. The financial assistance is for tuition and fees, not living expenses of the participant.
Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, I think, of the reviser, that what we're looking at is we want those master's degree programs to only come from Kansas schools. I mean, we have several of our military people take programs that are, you know, San Diego University, Phoenix, different places like that. So we are fine-tuning this to say we only want you to get a master's degree from a Kansas college, tuition paid here. Am I saying that correctly, what the goal is here?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the definition of a Kansas educational institution only refers to institutions that have a physical presence in Kansas. They are Kansas institutions.
Representative Younger.
Representative Riley's statement.
Sure, he'd be happy to grace us with his voice again. Representative Riley.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Oh, I meant that in the most respectful way, Mr. Riley.
I was just asking, I want to make sure that we're not missing any colleges or Kansas institutions that do a master's degree. And so that was my comment, is that we are making sure that we are getting all the Kansas places that give out a master's degree.
Sure. Further questions on the amendment? Representative Croft.
Just following up, so does that include all of them, including independent colleges and everything, or is this just public?
Mr. Chairman, the definition does include private independent institutions.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify that. That's what I thought.
I never ever thought I'd call on you in committee, sir.
What's that?
Never thought I'd call on you in committee. Further questions?
follow up real quick. So this amendment, who else commented? This was just from the Board of Regents, and did they negotiate this with other people, or is this just their thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, most of the amendments came from the testimony provided by the Board of Regents. I believe the reduction in service hours was a separate amendment that was incorporated within this balloon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and it was the Board of Regents that came to us with some of these concerns, and then the folks that brought us the bill actually worked with them and came up with this and said, we got no issue with this. And so that's how the amendment came about. Further discussion on the amendment? All right, seeing none, I will make a motion that we adopt the amendment, and I will look for a second from Riley. Representative Riley, my apologies. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very good, the amendment passes. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? All right, Representative Estes.
I move favorable passage of House Bill 2567.
All right, you heard the motion, I'm sorry? As amended, right? And I have a second from Representative Riley. Those in, any further discussion? All right, those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very good, bill's passed. All right, committee, that is our work for the day. I want to thank Representative Droege and Majority Leader Croft for filling in. We got a hearing tomorrow on the DARE bill, so dare to be here. All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.